The ACT Naija Social Development Program is a significant initiative aimed at driving growth and development in the lives of residents across 7 states in Nigeria. The project seeks to promote inclusive, transparent, and accountable social protection systems in Borno, Delta, Enugu, Osun, Ondo, Ekiti, and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. This initiative also focuses on key areas such as education, healthcare, economic empowerment, infrastructure development, and social welfare. The program's impact is expected to be felt across various sectors, contributing to a more sustainable and equitable future for the participating states. Joining us from our Abuja studio for this conversation is the Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, David Ugolo. Good morning. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
Now let's talk about ACT Naija and how it is that it will be bridging the gaps that we have faced in several areas that your organization is looking to ensure you implement the various issues that you have noticed in recent times, and also the fact that you're taking it to certain states. Especially talk to us about the matters that you saw, the gaps you saw, and felt there is a need to bridge.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I want to thank TVC for management for inviting me to at least present this. ACT Naija is a civil society action on social protection, which is a project of 3 consortium NGOs, Bread for the World, Germany, and ANED, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, and NIZ, an NGO based in Akure. Now, these 3 consortia won the bid from the European Union, which is now co-funded by European Union to the tune of about €1 million. And this project is aimed at supporting civil society capacity building across the 7 states and at the federal level. And the whole aim is to raise an awareness on the impact of social protection, like cash transfer program for the very poor and the vulnerable across Nigeria, and also to complement government efforts to see that the issue of supporting poor people across the country becomes a major policy thrust of government. And beyond that, to help to identify areas of gap and bring it to the awareness of government, and then come up with a policy to address those gaps. And as you know, one of the major policy of this current government is helping to attack poverty across the country through the cash transfer program. And you recall that the government took about $800 million from World Bank, all in an attempt to address the impact, adverse effect of the economic reform that the government is currently implementing due to the removal of the oil subsidy. And across the country, Nigerians, poor, very vulnerable Nigerians, are benefiting from this policy. Now, what would be the role of ACT Naija? ACT Naija is a civil society initiative aimed at generating political support for this program across the country, empowering the very vulnerable ones to be able to see how they can benefit, and then where there are gaps across the country, particularly in these 7 states where we will be launching the project, is to help governments see the gaps. And then those who are benefiting, because one of the things that we have also found out about cash transfer for the very poor in the country, people are very cynical. People don't believe that government is actually giving out support for the very poor across the country. And our experience, I would also monitored across the country the use of the recovered stolen money from Abacha stolen money for the cash transfer program across the country, is that hardly Nigerians believe, because of the cynicism, because of lack of trust in government. So our role as civil society is to raise an awareness, and where government claim to have supported the poor people, we go to the communities to confirm if those beneficiaries are actually in existence. And when there are existence, we try to raise an awareness. But in a situation where we found that those beneficiaries are not there, we also draw the attention of the government into it.
I am more interested in a majority of Nigerians understanding what you're doing. social protection.
Yes.
I may know the meaning of social protection and my colleagues on the table, but the average Nigerian may not understand what you mean when you say social protection. Number two is Act Naija. Tell us, give us a blow-by-blow plan that Act Naija has for the health care sector. We're just talking about primary health care in Nigeria being not where it should be.
Thank you very much. Social protection is a concept that describes action by government tackling poverty, the very poor in our society. And how do government deal with it? There are different strategies. And as you know, poverty has a multidimensional face. And so to deal with the challenge of poor people, very poor people in Nigeria, when you go to the rural area, there are very poor people who are not able to have money to buy drugs. They don't have money to even send their children to school. Some fall sick and they are not able to approach the hospital. And these very poor are very many in our society. As you are aware, Nigeria happens to be named as the capital of the poorest in the world. And so very poor people across the country. And government also have come up with how do we deal with this challenge. And that's where you see that not just Nigerian government alone, across the world, like India, Bangladesh, Somalia, all these countries have adopted a policy around social protection. Just like the two words signify, how do we deal with those who are vulnerable? How do we come out with initiative to empower, to ensure that the people have access to money, access to opportunity that will enable them, if their children are sick, they will be able to buy a drug. If their children are not able to go to school, they will be able to at least be able to send them to school. And then, through this social protection program, some of these people who are benefiting, which Nigerian government have started long before this administration, it is a way to provide access to money, and some of them come as cooperative within a community, and they are able to start small trade, and through that processes they are able to move away from not having resources and to having resources. And through that empowerment, which is through social protection program, and social protection have different dimensions. We have the one we call conditional cash transfer program, and you have to fall within a remit to be able to be qualified. And Nigeria have a database of the poor, of the poorest across the country in the National Social Register. In this National Social Register, that's where the organization like National Cash Transfer Office, NCTO, goes to mine the data of the poor, of the poorest. If, for example, they want to target these 7 states we are focusing now, like Osun, Ekiti, and Ondo, and Delta, Borno, Kogi, and Borno. So all these things, they have a database, and they are poor of the poorest that they have identified through a community-based approach, which the World Bank supported the Nigerian government. So in the Nigerian Social Register, the NCTO goes there to mine the data of the poorest of the poorest. That is where the people that are currently benefiting, that's where they draw the beneficiaries from. So this beneficiary gets at least 25,000 naira per month, and that's about 75,000 naira for 3 months. And through this support, they are able to at least buy drug, they are able to send their children to school at that local level, and then they are at least able to find expression in their community. People will say that, what will this so-called, before this administration, it was 5,000 naira. What will this help them to achieve? You see, you can sit down in your comfort home in Abuja, sit down in your comfort home in Lagos and say, what would 25,000 naira do? But I can tell you, in my experience of meeting with these very poor of the poorest across the country, I can see the impact that 25,000 naira, that 5,000 naira can do for a community person that is very poor, particularly when they are sick.
Can you hear me? I love how passionate you are, not to cut you short. Thank you so much. But what I want to speak about is that it's a beautiful initiative. Anything that will eradicate poverty, we definitely go for it. But we see that these 7 states were carefully picked. But I want to talk about Borno, because in recent times, Borno has faced a lot of humanitarian problems. We're speaking about, flooding, insecurity. And we know that the theme for this year is breaking barriers for the NGO. How is it going to, help when we talk about flooding, insecurity? And I'm picking Borno because this is a place that has had a lot of these issues.
Thank you very much. You rightly said so. And I'm happy that that the government is also rising up to the challenge. You know, this flooding happens annually, and as a result of sometimes when the dams are opened. And so government have also come out very strongly on trying to educate communities that are mostly going to be affected by this flooding by suggesting an alternative on how to deal with this challenge. And for Act Naija, what would be our response? We are also having our operations setting up now in Borno, is to raise an awareness and find a way to build consciousness among these community people who are going to be affected by the flooding, and to also begin to raise an awareness before the humanitarian ministry. Just 2 days ago, we met with the Minister for State for Humanitarian and Poverty Reduction. He also explained very clearly in our meeting that the humanitarian ministries are also coming up with a framework to deal with this challenge by reaching out to those community and the state government, and that hopefully that in the next few weeks they will be coming up with a framework to deal with the challenge. And for us as civil society, we want to keep them on the watch. We want to hold them accountable to this commitment and to begin to raise an awareness about the impact and who are those going to be affected, and mobilizing them to also get organized, because the key word is get organized, and that's the whole purpose of Act Naija, which is funded by the European Union. You see, one of the things that we are doing by getting organized is to be able to speak out and be able to raise an awareness about possible danger of this flooding. And it's not just Borno alone. People from community like in Naija and just across the that belt, they are all going to be affected. And normally what the government should do is raising an awareness and suggesting and creating an alternative pathway so that those who are going to be affected can easily find an option to move out of those areas where that it will be flooded. Because these are natural disasters. There's nothing anybody can do about it.
Let's come here because we don't have a lot of time, you know. Great initiative you're handling. But I'm wondering really, you mentioned that 25,000 naira wouldn't really be anything, say in Abuja or Lagos, which is the truth. And I also understand the level of, poverty, which would bring 25,000 or 5,000 naira to do a lot of good for our brothers and sisters in the rural community. But my concern really is this, sir. Is cash distribution the best way to go about alleviating poverty at that level? What other initiatives, apart from monitoring cash distribution from your, organization, what other initiatives do you have that will help alleviate the sufferings of those people? Because we cannot continually be bringing 5,000 or any other amount to them. Can we do something different?
Yes, you see, that's why in dealing with the challenge of poverty, it's not what government alone can do. You see, we have to move beyond just government solving all the entire problem. And that's why the National Social Register is available to also a private sector. And I've seen sometime Dangote and other private companies in the country trying to come up with a way to support. For our organization, we are also having our own way of also dealing with the challenge beyond just monitoring and creating awareness about what government is doing in terms of making sure a cash transfer is available to the poor. We have also come out with a strategic intervention. For example, in Delta State, we have, through the support we have got from the Swiss Embassy, we have come out with a microcredit granny cassava industry for the very poor. And what we're also thinking in Borno is that as this flooding beginning to threaten, is that how can we help to support the state government to design a small makeshift so that the people, when the flood comes, they should be able to have an option. And if they move away from their primary area of staying, then they need a different kind of system of economy to be able to survive. And we're also trying to explore the option of making available some kind of support that will help empower this set of people that have decided to move as a result of this natural flooding that is coming from the river. And for us, what can we do to help to alleviate such difficulties is by providing an alternative means of livelihood. And this livelihood comes through the empowerment. And we're also going to be encouraging the Ministry of Humanitarian and Poverty Reduction that also have a lot of resources allocated for such support, and see how government support actually goes to the targeted group, because that's one of the key challenges that we are facing in the country. Is it that government is not able to deal with this challenge? It's not the fact that sometimes when government budget is allocated for such kind of activity, it doesn't go to the right people.
And that's where my concern comes in now quickly, because we're trying to manage time. The president has asked that about 2 billion be released for rehabilitation of Niger State, where we saw the flooding in Mokwa, and 20 trucks of grains sent, transformers to be installed, and all of it. I'm wondering from your perspective if this is the step in the right direction and how best to address these matters, because I recall at some point NEMA was saying that they needed to ensure that the right people get these relief materials, and that's why they had not delivered relief materials to certain persons.
Yes, exactly. And one of the initiatives we're about to announce as part of Act Naija interventions, we're also going to be reaching out to the TVC management, the NTA management, and other key TV stations across the country. We want to set up a partnership to keep an eye on these disbursement. We want to make sure, because one of the best way to ensure that these benefits gets to the people is creating an awareness, is creating transparency. And I'm very encouraged by the commitment of this current Minister for Humanitarian and Poverty Reduction, committed to transparency and accountability. So we are going to put an eye to make sure that as the disbursement is going on, it gets to the right people. I think this is the really big challenge. It's not that we don't have enough resources to deal with this challenge, but does these resources get to the people? And that's how Act Naija wants to complement government effort, to ensure that whatever any resources government is putting into addressing this flooding problem and addressing poverty that is associated with it, that the resources gets to the people. And that for me is something that we also...
So what happens if the resources do not get to the people? What does this Act Naija, what will they do quickly?
What we have done before, we blow the whistle and we report those officials that are responsible. And in the previous case, when we did monitor the return of Abacha money for cash transfer program, those officials that were responsible were reported to ICPC, and they are currently being prosecuted. And so once we found a gap, we will report them. We will blow the whistle, that's what Act Naija is going to do.
David Ugola, Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, thank you for your time on the program.